Hello, I'm the 10-minute English teacher. Let's get you exam ready. Today we're thinking about power and conflict poetry for AQA GCSE English Literature, and I'm going to be providing you with summary and analysis for Storm on the Island. Okay, Storm on the Island by Seamus, Heaney. It's an absolutely fantastic poem, and it's about a community that lives on an island in fear of the destruction that storms can bring. So it's a poem that explores the power of nature. So, what the poem's about. We're going to have a reading of the poem in a moment, but before we get there, let's just think very clearly about what the poem explores. So the poem is told from the perspective of someone who lives on a small island in fear of storms that can cause huge devastation to communities there. Storm on the Island reflects how humanity cannot match or overcome the power of nature, and it presents us with nature versus nurture as a binary opposition. You can interpret the poem as an extended metaphor for conflicts in Ireland, where communities have lived in fear of conflict. So, Storm on the Island by Seamus, Heaney. We are prepared. We build our houses squat, sink walls in rock and roof them with good slate. The wizened earth has never troubled us with hay, so, as you see, there are no stacks or stooks that can be lost, nor are there trees which might prove company when it blows full blast. You know what I mean. Leaves and branches can raise a tragic chorus in a gale, so that you can listen to the thing you fear, forgetting that it pummels your house too. But there are no trees, no natural shelter. You might think that the sea is company, exploding comfortably down on the cliffs, but no. When it begins, the flung spray hits the very windows, spits like a tame cat turned savage. We just sit tight while wind dives and strafes invisibly. Space is a salvo. We're bombarded by the empty air. Strange. It's a huge nothing that we fear. Seamus Heaney. So here's a paragraph that explores what the poem is about in really simple terms, just using a couple of sentences, and this is what I have for you. So Storm on the Island explores how islanders live in fear of storms and the weather. It presents us with the idea that nature is something that cannot be tamed or mastered and will always be more powerful than humanity. So I've opened up my response with a paragraph that just explains what my poems are about, and then after that I'm going to have a new paragraph that explores their structures. So you want to think about the rhyme scheme or the metre of each poem and make a comment about that in relation to the theme of the question in the exam. Here's an example from me. The poem is written in iambic pentameter, but without a rhyme scheme which creates an uneasy tone and feeling. This serves to reflect the tension and anxiety that the islanders live with in fear of the devastation that storms can bring. In front of you now is the only flashcard that you should need for this poem. Now, you may have thought about each line in the poem and what some of that more unfamiliar language might mean. But in all honesty, in the time that you've got, about 45 minutes, you're only going to be using 3 or 4 quotes from each of your 2 poems. Once you've explained how they relate to the question and you've explored the structure, you're then into analysing language and making some comparisons. You're going to use 6, 7 or 8 quotes and analyse those. So for Storm on the Island, these are quotes that I recommend you know confidently and be ready to analyse in the exam. So we've got It's a huge nothing that we fear. It's actually the end of the poem, so you can certainly talk about that if you want to make a structural comment. But ultimately, we're thinking about the idea that people are living in fear of something that's invisible. But this idea is quite interesting because it could be alluding to the idea that we're alone in a godless universe. It could be about more than just storms. It could be a reference to death and how life is fleeting and that we live in fear of death. You could see that the storm is a metaphor for death if you wanted to there. You can interpret that ending to this poem in different ways. Leaves and branches can raise a tragic chorus in a gale. So we've got some really dark and emotive imagery in this metaphor. And the adjective tragic here emphasises the idea that the storm can be responsible for a loss of life. Nature is far more powerful than humanity. And we've got this storm exploding comfortably down on the cliffs. So this phrase explores the idea that the sea has got great power and it exudes force with ease. There's also something oxymoronic about this. This phrase, exploding comfortably, creates an uneasy feeling in the reader. And I love this wonderful simile, spits like a tame cat turned savage. So this simile is exploring the idea that we look at the sea with love and trust as we do that our pets, something that's close to us and a part of our everyday life. But nature can turn on us And we've got this juxtaposition here of tame and savage, just to reflect the idea that circumstances on this island can change very quickly. If you want to take your revision further, from this video you should have come away with an understanding of the structure as well as some of the key quotes in the poem. So think about, can you recall those key themes and how they're explored? Can you explain the effect of structure on the poem? And can you analyse 4 key quotes from it? So I would recommend that if you can't do that comfortably, maybe go back using the play bar and revisit the video or watch it again entirely to make sure that you're comfortable with this poem, should it be the named poem in the exam. Okay, check out the other videos on my channel. I'll continue to add content. Feel free to ask for something you'd like to see me cover in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share, and keep revising.